going to shift to Final Fantasy 13, which for me felt like betrayal.
Final Fantasy 13 can best be summarized like this, at least according to what I've heard, is that this is the part where Square decided, ooh, let's concentrate on visuals. Plot, we'll get in there somehow, but the visuals, it's all about the visuals.
Yes.
Which is a ton of BS.
Yes, it was. Final Fantasy 13 was released in Japan December 2009, and then it came out in March 2010 in the USA. This is also the first time the series makes the jump to the Xbox. It's not just Sony exclusive anymore.
I would disagree that it was all just about the visuals and not the plot. Final Fantasy 13 to me actually had one of the most in-depth plots other than 12, especially with the basically encyclopedia system where you can read up on anything, including looking back at stuff to remind you of stuff you forgot.
Okay. I'll leave you with that opinion. I don't agree with it, but that's your opinion.
I think the issue with 13 was that the plot in 13 you really didn't have any emotional attachment to compared to the other games.
Well, it definitely has the issue that we mentioned in several of the other games, including 8, of no driving villain. To me, that's the big issue. There's no driving villain you have an emotional attachment to beat the game. Like, I think it has plenty of backstory and plot, but there's nothing that emotionally that brings you into the game emotionally. That I can completely agree with, even coming from somebody who likes the game.
This game, I felt, I will have to definitely agree with Andy on this one. This game, I felt Square basically just said, let's push the graphical limits of the PlayStation 3. Let's make this game as pretty and as shiny as we possibly can. And on that regard, they succeeded. It is probably one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen.
But it doesn't matter how much pretty you have. I mean,
that's where the joy ends for me.
Well, it's like, yes, let's do a comparison right now. Final Fantasy 13 and Final Fantasy 7. Both of them were made to be beautiful to bring people in.
Yep.
One did it right, one did it wrong, but having a focus on making the visuals good is something that, whether people admit it or not, has been a focus of every Final Fantasy game after 6.
Agreed, but
right.
I mean, to this point, it's just that to a lot of people, and that includes you guys, it doesn't have redeeming factors about it. Like, focusing on visuals isn't bad, but that can't be the only thing. And I don't think that was the only thing. You guys disagree, but I mean, saying that they focused on visuals, I don't think they focused on visuals any more than they have with any other Final Fantasy, because 10, when it came out, was amazing in visuals. People were talking about how amazing it looked. Same thing with 8, same thing with 7. The only one that wasn't was 9, but that's more because some people didn't like the cartoony graphics.
This is me personally speaking, but I personally feel like Final Fantasy 13 was a game that was changed several times throughout its development and kind of got lost in the way of how they wanted the game to be.
I'll agree with that.
Like, I personally feel that this is a game where, yeah, like they lost focus on a couple key points, and while some of the things they excelled in, like the graphics and the visuals, I feel like they lost track with the plot. I think could use a little bit more explanation, but I'm okay. I'm willing to get that one a little bit of a pass just because it is actually pretty in-depth if you spend the time to read everything. But it's very much not connected well. Like, none of the story plots seem to line up too good.
And
the only time I really feel that the story actually is good and makes sense, and you know where you are in the game, is I don't remember the exact scene, but you go to Hope's parents' home, and you have a talk with the parents.
with his dad.
Yeah, with his dad specifically, and you have this emotional connection, and you have plot and character development, and then you have the boss fight with the helicopter. That entire whole scene, to me, feels like it was one of the more better scenes they've done. And it was also one of the very first things that they demoed to the audience at E3. Was it E3 or the Tokyo Game Show?
It was E3, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so, and I feel like they kind of had to keep that one in because they demoed it so much. And I really feel like if they could have had the game be more of that, of the character development, the emotional connection, the tense boss fight that it was challenging, but after you beat it, you're like, yes, I beat this. That was fun.
Well, I don't know how true this is, but I heard, for me, the game came together when they got to Pulse, which is very close to the end of the game.
I mean, admittedly speaking, like the whole linear part of it, the fact that quite literally the first 25 hours of the game is nothing but you walking forward to the next blinking checkpoint is definitely the biggest knock I have against it.
I heard that the game was that whole beginning port, the whole 3/4 of the game that was the beginning portion of it, that was not meant to be 3/4 of the game. I heard that was supposed to be about 1/4 of the game, and then they just kept adding to it, and that's why, like, they split it into 10-2 and went in a different direction with that. But like, the game changed hugely, and they have mentioned this. It changed hugely in development because you were supposed to get free range on Pulse like at least halfway through the game, if not earlier, in most of the early stuff. But then they changed it.
Yeah, I mean,
again and again.
And the biggest thing, I mean, I was just so really disgusted by how extremely linear the game was. You had virtually no side quests. I felt that each character was pretty much one-dimensional. It did not feel like a Final Fantasy title. It just, if I wanted somebody to hold my hand for 60 hours, I'd ask my wife to just hold my hand. It was just...
I gotta say, I haven't played 13, so it's interesting listening to you guys talk about all this, but I have played, I have the latest version of Dissidia, which, for anyone who doesn't know, that's like a game that basically took all the Final Fantasy characters and put them all in one universe from across the board.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
it's Final Fantasy fighting game.
Yeah. And so I noticed, like, right off the bat, in the beginning of it, because I played Dissidia, like, 012 or 012, whatever you want to call it, and there's a whole opening scene with a bunch of different characters from different games. Like, Laguna's in there, and I think Teeth is in there, I don't remember. Yep. But, Lightning's a big part of it from 13, and honestly, I kind of found her to be the blandest character. Even though she was kind of the one at the helm, I was like, I don't care about this person, like, care about the other characters. And It's not just a familiarity thing, because there's plenty of characters that were from games I hadn't played yet, but I was just like, there's no personality here.
To me, she was kind of like them making a female version of Cloud. But
Cloud has so much more depth, I felt like. And like I said, maybe I'm saying this because I haven't played 13 and I don't know any of her backstory.
No, you aren't really that far off. Lightning is a soldier, like, through and through. She is definitely the serious,
stoic,
must achieve the mission goal type of character. Now, that's saying that she doesn't have personality. Like, she does have emotions and beliefs and things like that, but they're very few and far between. And personally speaking, and this is just my opinion, she's the most developed character of the cast.
I would agree to a point. I think she is very well developed. The other character I think was well developed was Saz.
Yeah, Saz I would say is also probably the other developed character because he is a father trying to go and rescue his son.
He feels like somebody you could meet. He feels like he could be a real person other than the chocobo in his hair.
Yeah.
But most of the other characters don't feel that way. Hope did get some development. He went from being whiny to less whiny.
He got a tiny bit of development, but he's still a whiny bitch. The
Snow was just like, I've got to save everybody.
Nobody likes Snow.
Yes, no one likes Snow. Can someone please remind me on the last two characters' names?
Fang and Vanille.
Yeah, I was just gonna say those two.
Yeah, Fang and Vanille. Vanille is definitely very bland in my opinion. I someone can correct me on this, but I believe Fang was originally meant to be a guy, and that Fang and Vanille were going to have a relationship, but then they decided to make Fang a girl at the last minute.
That's the first I've heard of it. That doesn't mean it's not true, though.
And so now you have this weird lesbian tension going on between Fang and Vanille.
Yeah, well, I was not particularly thrilled with the game. After 60 hours of it and beating the final boss, I was just like, yeah, no, not touching this one ever again.
Yeah.
Well, to be totally honest, I haven't played Final Fantasy 13 myself. I just know I've heard a lot of the hearsay, and this is just something completely random. But I have like Final Fantasy 13 sitting about within the arm's reach of where I'm sitting right now, and the disc has never been inserted in my PS3, and the cover is collecting dust. That's how much I put it off because of what I've heard so much about.
Yeah, and you know, this game has spawned some sequels. Final Fantasy 13-2, which is sitting on my shelf gathering dust. It's not opened yet.
I refuse to buy a 13-2 until I can get it for $10.
And there is a Final Fantasy 13-3 in development.
Lightning Returns.
Isn't there a Versus one too?
Yeah,
there's supposed to be.
There is their Final Fantasy. It's called Lightning Returns, and this is supposed to be the end of the Final Fantasy 13 saga.
Would you call this the modern day Final Fantasy VIII in how it polarized people?
Yes, I could certainly agree to that.
Because despite how some things have said, it does have vocal fans.
Yes.
It's not just regarded badly.
Yes.
Let's put my personal opinion on 13 is that it's probably pretty low on the Final Fantasy scale, but if you compare it to other certain games out there, it's not too bad.
Right.
Well, critically it did very well. I mean, it had 39 out of 40 at Famitsu. It got 85 or above pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, it did get pretty. It was pretty positively reviewed, with the exception being Edge magazine.
5 out of 10, yeah.
Which gave it the 5 out of 10, and again, with the biggest complaint being just how linear it is, as well as the battle system, where for the first time you did not have full control over your party. You had your main character, and then your other two party members were completely AI controlled. And that if your main character died, regardless of your other two party members, it was game over.
Yeah, I will admit that like the battle system probably could have been done a little bit better, but
that sounds cheap.
I was
like the fact that your main controlling character dies, that's game over. That's bad. That should not be. But the AI was actually pretty competent for the most part.
The AI is very competent. I'll give you that. And you know, they introduced something called the paradigm shift, which is kind of like the garment grid, where you can change job classes on the fly.
Yeah, I did like the paradigm shift because it was reminiscent of 10.2's garment grid, but it was less specific classes and more of a defined role. Like you have a support class compared to a melee attacker, compared to a mage attacker, compared to a healer, compared to a debuffer, and then the last class was...
Trying to remember, you had sentinels, you had
like your tank.
Hey Brian,
yo,
Lightning Returns takes what you're talking about to its natural conclusion of, in Final Fantasy 13 you only control one character. In Lightning Returns, you only play as one character. You have no one else in your party.
Oh, it's like Dragon Quest 1.
Yeah, well, they're marketing. I think they're marketing Lightning Returns as this pseudo Devil May Cry sort of thing.
Here's an interesting piece of trivia. Because of some of the negative reviews that Final Fantasy 13 got, the director of the game, he felt that the lower... I'm reading from Wikipedia now. He felt that the lower than expected review scores for a main Final Fantasy series came from reviewers who approached the game with a Western point of view. These reviewers were used to games in which the player was given an open world to explore, he said, noting that this expectation contrasted with the vision the team set out to create. He noted that it quote, becomes very difficult to tell a compelling story when you're given that much freedom.
That's what I was talking about earlier. That's who I was trying to quote.
And, you know...
And just to touch on its sequels here for a moment, I've heard that, again, I haven't played any of the 13s, but I've heard that 13-2, still not great, but it improved on the 13 by a little bit. Have any of you guys played 13-2 and can confirm or deny this?
I haven't played 13-2, it's still sitting unopened.
Same with me, I own
You're
it.
too begrudged by the first one.
From what I have heard as well, 13-2 is a slightly better game. The battle system, I believe, is the biggest selling point for 13-2. The plot is kind of weird. And by kind of, I mean really. For a Final Fantasy game.
I can say this because my friend and I had a long discussion about 13-2 because he's a large fan, but they definitely fixed the battle system, and you get free reign like you did in Pulse much earlier in the game, so it's not as linear.
Good. I have something to look forward to then.
Yeah, the reason the reason why I haven't picked up 13-2 yet is because I know how the game ends in terms of the plot. Because I don't mind spoilers. I really don't let spoilers affect me, or at least I try not to. But for this one, I just irks me so much on what happens that at the very end that I cannot justify buying the game.
Well, don't tell me that. Don't tell me the ending.
Basically, what I found. Basically, what I
statute yet.
Yeah. What I know about Final Fantasy 13 versus 13-2 is Final Fantasy 13's biggest problems were where it's too linear and its battle system. Well, they fixed those two issues in 13-2, but in 13-2 they introduced their own storyline issues, which 13, whether you like it or not, really didn't have a lot of issues with its plot. You could follow it and you knew what was going on. 13-2, not so much at all.
Oh. Be that as it may, 13 was definitely a polarizing entry in the series, and now we're going to move on to the last numbered entry.
Shall we just start laughing?
Has anyone played this at all?
No, because because it was never released. It was released briefly, but we're going to Final Fantasy XIV, which is yet another online-only version, because I guess Square decided,
they didn't make enough money off of 11.
Yeah.
The original idea was that 14 would replace 11, but that didn't work out.
Then when they announced that they were going to take 11 servers down, there was such a huge outcry, even from people who don't play the game anymore, that they couldn't.
This was released for Windows in September 2010, so this came out less than a year after Final Fantasy XIII, and its problems apparently were apparent right out of the gate. This game was rushed.
Yeah, I did play 14 briefly. There was a bevy of problems with the game. Like, I was in the beta, and I thought, okay, well, it's beta. Well, they're going to fix some of these issues and try and address more as the game goes on. They couldn't even fix the issues that were in the beta, much less the issues that were plaguing the system at launch. And it took them a better part of a year just to get the game out of what I would call alpha status and into a semi-presentable position. And by that time, they just could not recoup the losses on it, and they had to pull the plug.
And that they did. They're going to relaunch the game at some point this year.
Now, they didn't just pull the plug. My boyfriend showed me this the other day. They actually animated an ending. They destroyed the world.
Yeah, and now, admittedly speaking, if you have characters in the original Final Fantasy XIV, they will be ported over to Final Fantasy XIV Reborn. But they did have an animated ending scene, and quite literally, the world ends, and the only reason you survive is because the mages of that time ported you to a different. I think they ported you to a different plane of existence.
It was like Bahamut, I believe, right? Something like that.
I believe it was Bahamut because he explodes out of the moon and then mega flares the entire planet.
So it's freaking Bahamut.
Meteor comes and that's it.
Yeah. We had no whatever. Oh, damn it! I can't remember what the white material's name is now. Damn it! Holy, thank you. Yeah, no holy this time.
Yeah, basically, Final Fantasy XIV can be summed up with the Price is Right fail horn. That's basically
wow.
I'm sure you.
Final Fantasy 14, making even 13 look good.
Yeah, it's just sad trombone everywhere. So, it is. The game is currently offline because of such negative critical reception, and it will be completely redone. It was originally scored in its entirety by Uematsu, incidentally.
Well, at least there was something good about it.
Even going off of what you guys were saying about 13 and like visuals over substance, it was a gorgeous game. It was absolutely stunningly beautiful.
Yeah, 14 does look pretty good.
You can only, you can't polish a turd, it's...
Well, you can polish a turd, it's still a turd, though.
Exactly. You can only put on so many coats of paint, but it's still, it's still a crappy foundation. So, that's what it came to. Although it did have a really awesome Moogle parade scene that made me very happy.
All right.
The only consolation for 13 is that I have played and seen worse games out there.
Why were Moogles not a playable race? That's my one question.
They never are.
They should be.
Except in 6.
Final Fantasy 6. You get Mog on your team.
Yes, good. And so, now that we have gone through the numbered series, and now that we have gone over 3 hours on this thing, god damn.
We're hardcore fans.
I'm
the hardest of hardcore fans.
Not complaining. Let's spend just a tiny amount of time on some of the offshoot games.
So this is where we get to show off our love of tactics, right?
This is where you get to wax nostalgia about tactics. I have played none of the offshoot games, so to the rest of you, have at it.
Does Kingdom Hearts count as an offshoot game?
No, it does not.
I tried to ask.
Surprisingly enough, it does not count. Final Fantasy Tactics was originally a PlayStation 1 game, I want to say 1995, 1996. No, I was wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you are.
1997, 1998, because Cloud's in Tactics as a hidden character. It's set in the continent and world of Evilise, and it is a turn-based strategy game. Very complex plot. Very complex.
Betrayals everywhere, and
there's betrayal. It's a religious cover-up dating back a couple hundred years at least that you're only just now finding about because...
I say what I was just describing it to my wife's mother actually a little while ago was it's basically Game of Thrones the game.
With less sex.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say the whole way from it now.
I had purchased Final Fantasy Tactics on a friend's recommendation, and about an hour in, when I realized that this game was going to be a game of chess, I went, no, fuck that, I'm done.
Oh, it's such a good game.
It is a game of chess, but instead of having 7 or 8 pieces that have very defined roles, you have 7 or 8 pieces that can jump and summon Bahamut.
Yes. It's just. I mean, I have nothing against the game. I just don't like strategy RPGs. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine then.
Yeah.
There are some spin-offs of the Tactics series, specifically Tactics Advance for the Game Boy Advance.
And Tactics Advance 2 Remore.
Yeah. You have a remake of the PS1 Tactics, Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions for the PSP, where it gets some anime cutscenes. It gets a better localization because there's some funny translation errors. And
during that time period, there always were.
Yeah. There's the Dissidia games, which are basically Final Fantasy Soul Calibur.
I lost my mind the first time I saw those trailers. It was like, you have to admit, for a Final Fantasy fan, that was like a dream come true.
Yeah, I only had the first Dissidia, and haven't even fully beat it. But what I played through, I love it.
Yeah, it is actually a very good game. Not just the fact that it is a Final Fantasy fan wax off of who can win in a fight versus Kefka versus Sephiroth.
I mean, it's a total fan game, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, one, it is a total fan game, but it's actually a really good fan game.
Yeah, it's not just like shoehorning in as much as they can just because they know the fans will buy it. It's a legitimately good game.
It is a legitimately good game. There is a Dissidia 012, which basically is a fighting game with expanded roster. You have Lightning and then a couple other people.
Yes, and then of course, you have Mystic Quest, Crystal Chronicles,
Dirge of Cerberus.
Yeah, I was about to say, we never touched on Before Crisis, Dirge of Cerberus, and Crisis Core, any of those.
No, the compilation of Final Fantasy VII. That was the Square milking Final Fantasy VII for all it was worth.
Yeah, Before Crisis Core, which is the Zack game, Dirge of Cerberus, which is after Advent Children.
Yep.
Vincent's game.
I'm trying to remember which one of those 3 was reviewed as "Do Not Touch."
Dirge of Cerberus.
Dirge of Cerberus. Okay. I
worst
can
part
remember.
though, Dirge of Cerberus actually had a decent story. The gameplay just blew ass.
Oh god, I played and beat Dirge of Cerberus. The plot actually is pretty decent. The gameplay is absolutely horrid. Imagine Devil May Cry done wrong.
Which is what we have coming up, but that's another story.
Yeah. That's basically what Dirge of Cerberus was like everything good and swell about Devil May Cry, from the action to the sweet camera angles to the badass Dante. You saw a badass Vincent, but the camera angles were horrible. The customization wasn't nearly as good as Devil May Cry's, and just like the enemies you fought would be a lot of cheap shots that you really would not see in Devil May Cry. It did not reward skill as much as it should have.
Question for you, Brian. Since I wasn't here in the last issue, did you guys touch on Final Fantasy IV: The After Years last time, or is that part of the spin-offs?
I think we touched upon it very briefly.
We mentioned
didn't really get into
we
it.
didn't really go in depth on it.
We just mentioned that it was part of the PSP release.
Okay.
I mean, Final Fantasy IV: The After Years, for you uneducated masses out there, is the sequel to Final Fantasy IV. It takes place 17 years after the events.
It's Cecil and Rose's kid, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And then pretty much every playable character you ever played in the original game, and a crapload you didn't.
Yes. So, I started that game. I haven't gotten too much, made too much progress in it, but it
pretty much the same as me.
Yeah, I mean, it plays. I mean, it's set in the same sort of style as Final Fantasy IV. So,
hey, let me play Rydia again, and that's all I need, because I love that girl.
Not to say it's Rydia, but it's Rydia as an adult.
Yes.
So she's legal.
Rydia.
So she's legal.
Rydia is one of my favorite characters of all time.
So. Well,
There's one more fun one that I just played recently on iPad. Theater Rhythm.
Yep.
Which is, I mean, that's probably the most laid-back Final Fantasy game you're ever going to play. It's basically you take...
It's Final Fantasy Guitar Hero.
Exactly. It's Final Fantasy Guitar Hero. It's all of your favorite songs from every game. And, you know, as you're playing, little chibi versions of all your characters that you make go and battle little chibi versions of Bahamut, and it's fun.
Yeah.
You know, isn't there also that Final Fantasy Adventure we were talking about a while back?
Yeah, Final Fantasy Adventure was originally a Game Boy game. In actuality, it's Seiken Densu 1, which is known in the States more likely as Secret of Mana.
Yep. But here's the funny part. We named it Final Fantasy when it came over here, but it was legitimately a side... It was originally marketed as a side story of Final Fantasy in Japan.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, Seiken Densetsu literally was a side story to Final Fantasy. That's what it was supposed to be. And then I actually believe the first one, it's supposed to take place, I believe, in an earlier version of the Final Fantasy V world before they completely deviate the story. I think it was the first game was literally supposed to connect to a Final Fantasy. The later ones, that's when they decided, oh, this is popular, we're going to make its own series.
And what about that timeless classic Chocobo racing?
Didn't
Don't
touch
forget
that
Chocobo
one.
Dungeon. Isn't there a Chocobo Dungeon as well? Or is that Chocobo Racing 2?
There's Final Fantasy Fables Chocobo's Dungeon, yes.
Okay.
So, and there was also a game I thought was related to Final Fantasy called Ehrgeiz.
Ehrgeiz.
Ehrgeiz, thank you.
Ehrgeiz, that was the PS1 game that just so happened to have fighting in it, just so happened to have Cloud, Tifa, and Sephiroth as playable characters.
As well as Yuffie, Vincent, and Zack. So, but there's that. Alright, last thing I want to discuss before we put this thing to bed. The future. Where do you see the series going?
I pray as hard as I can that we are going to get Versus 13 within a few years. At this point, I'll take it even within a few years. Just give me Versus 13.
Do you think we're going to get a 15?
Yes. without a
Eventually.
doubt.
And I hate to say,
That's the
but
thing.
Eventually, we will get to 15. Now, it probably won't be on this generation of consoles because, as much as I hate to admit it, they're already doing development on the next generation of consoles, and then I can almost guarantee that 15 is going to be on it.
I would like to see, if we're going to get a Final Fantasy 15, to not be the linear hold-your-hand gameplay that 13 was.
I see the core games on the consoles continuing to try new things. Whether it's being linear or not, we're not going to see any Final Fantasy games that are the same as one of the previous ones. That's not going to.
They're always experimental, and that's fine. It's just
Personally speaking, here's what I want from the next Final Fantasy game. I want fully fleshed out characters, a storyline that doesn't railroad you, but like
I would the invisible tracks.
Yeah, like it has invisible tracks, gives the illusion of an open world, even if it really isn't one. Like even if you have a certain point of like you can only explore zone 1 and there's 10 zones, and you have to progress through story point A to get to zone 2.
And it would probably I guess what we've identified as the biggest problem in a lot of these later Final Fantasies is that you had to have that emotional attachment, maybe not like within maybe the first hour or so of the game. Somebody getting killed off. I mean, as sad as that sounds, that's an emotional attachment right there that will draw people in. And this villain who from the get-go, who you have to kill by the end of this, unless they, of course, pull a Final Fantasy 9 on us.
Yeah, well, you need to have that emotional attachment within the first I'd say 3 to 5 hours. Now, whether that's the identification, I mean, basically that means you identify who the main antagonist is, you have to have a reason to hate the main antagonist, and it has to be affecting the characters on a very deep level. For example, say the main antagonist killed your parents. It's kind of it's a bit of a trope, but it's a pretty good reason for you to hate the person, especially if the parents are presented to you as people that you should like.
I just want a good game.
Brian, that's just too much to ask.
I think, like I was saying, that the main titles are going to be experimental. I think we're going to see a lot more titles on the handheld market that are going to be similar to things we've already seen. They're going to use the handheld market for the nostalgia games, for the ones that are still turn-based or tactics-based, or things that will draw people in while they experiment with the big blockbusters.
Yeah, more than likely I can see that the handhelds being where the remakes go, and you save the consoles for the blockbuster numbered series.
I don't think it's... well, here's the thing. We've seen a lot of remakes. I think in the next 5 years or so, we are going to start seeing more original Final Fantasies on the handhelds that are more inspired by the old games.
Yeah. I'd like to see that, but you also know what else I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't sing a full-blown 3D remake in all of its shiny HD glory of Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah,
that would be really nice.
Well, I think personally, me personally speaking, I think the industry needs to start realizing that the consoles as a whole need to be more like the PC in terms of it has to be a media box as well as a device that can play video games.
Well, I think they already try to do that.
They have.
I mean,
multiple times.
Our Xbox is literally like, that's where we watch Netflix, that's where we, watch videos online. I mean, it's become
a hub. The PlayStation 3 is advertised as it can do anything.
And that didn't work out that well for it.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like the next generation...
It only does 800A8... No.
Yeah. But I feel like the next consoles literally do have to be marketed as a PC. Like, you have to be able to go on the internet with it. You have to be able to watch Netflix on it. You have to be able to download games to it directly through the internet.
I mean, and here's the question. This is a completely different concept, but why necessarily? It has not helped. The PS2 and the PS3 and the Xbox have all tried to market themselves that way, and they've done studies, and it hasn't. Their sales haven't increased because of this, because they were working this way. I mean, most people, whether it's that may be convenient sometimes, but just about everybody has a computer right now, has already a media box in some way, in some form. It maybe they'll switch over to the new one, but it's not like it's a selling point anymore.
The reason why I say this is because this is more so a point for both our generation and the generation behind us. Like, we are increasingly becoming a very tech savvy culture. We're increasingly becoming a more digital culture as well. So the fewer devices that we need to remain digitally connected to everyone, the more money you're going to save and the more money that a company is going to make. Because you're going to be buying the products through this particular company.
Just to touch on the PS2 and all the advertising that they've been doing, is that I understand that still, to this day, the PlayStation 2 has been the most successful selling unit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That is true.
And of course, discontinued yesterday.
Yeah. And a lot of that is, it is one of the only systems with 100% backwards compatibility.
Yeah.
You have a huge number of people who didn't buy the PS1, bought the PS2 going, well, hey, we have the whole PS1 library. I know people who did that, who their first system was a PS2 because there was already a bunch of games to buy. Why would you buy any of the other systems? Why would you buy a GameCube or an Xbox? There's not as many games to play.
Yeah, there you go.
If you're going to choose one.
we shall see how the series continues to progress. Hopefully Square doesn't make more bombs. That's all I ask. I would like to get them to get back to good writing, please.
Well, here, before we get off the air, for everybody here, what games do you really feel were complete bombs out of the whole series?
Out of the whole series?
14.
That would be the biggest one for me. Is 14.
Complete bombs. Hold on. There were definitely, for me, 3 games out of the series that I've played. I don't count the online games.
Mm-hmm.
That I did not get really any enjoyment out of. 2.
Yep.
8.
Okay.
13.
Okay. I can get behind that.
Those are my 3 games. Once to me, and this is true of any video game, once it feels like work,
yeah,
it's no longer fun. And out of the entire series, those were the 3 for me.
That's actually why.
That was the original Final Fantasy 1 for me, but I played that I played the NES version, the original version.
Yep.
And that is definitely work, and it's a lot of grinding, and you get a reward, but not as much of a reward as you're used to from a Final Fantasy game because it's the first one, and there's less story and more work.
It's more like the rewards of old Nintendo games in that your reward is beating a really hard game.
Exactly. That's what the reward is. It's just beating the hard game, which is a reward.
It's like, why do you beat Ghosts and Goblins? Well, because it's one of the hardest games ever made, so you have the satisfaction of beating it. That's basically why.
Exactly. But it just sucks when you've been spoiled by, I beat a game and then I get to watch a 20-minute cinema and see the whole thing end. And the Final Fantasy one, it's 5 minutes of text and it's over. But it was still worth it just to say I beat it. So.
I mean, mine that I would say were complete bombs. I'll be honest, basically only 14. I think every other game, even 8, which I'm not a huge fan of, I think all of them had redeeming characteristics, and every one of them, regardless of how we may feel about their quality, brought new people into the series, and that's the most important thing to me.
Well, there you go. And I think we are now 3.5 hours in.
Are we done?
I think we have beaten this to death.
That's what happens when you have
we've killed it 5 times.
Longest
we got the Ultima Sword. Longest boss battle. Fucking Supernova. We're done. Hallelujah. We are free at last.
It's time to cast Holy and just save the world.
Yeah, so happy anniversary, Square Enix. Happy anniversary, Final Fantasy, for 25, by and large, great years. And hopefully we get the good games flowing again. So if you have anything you want to say about this episode or any other episode of Downloadable Content, you can get onto our Facebook page at facebook.com/downloadablecontent. You can find all of our episodes on iTunes. You can also get in touch at Twitter at DLContent. So all that remains for me to do is to thank Shanna, Ron, Ronnie, and newbie Andy for joining us on this retrospective of Final Fantasy. I'm Brian, and have a good one, everybody.
Alone for a while, I've been searching through the dark for traces of the love you left inside my lonely heart, to weave by picking up the pieces that remain, melodies of life, love's lost refrain. Our paths they did cross, though I cannot say just why. We met, we left, we held on fast, and then we said goodbye. And who'll flies by, gliding through the shadows of the clouds.